I'm going to teach you 11 key principles in king and pawn endings that are going to help you win more endgames. This position that we're about to see was taken from an actual game, a rapid game that I played a couple of days ago, and it was so instructive that I actually put my endgame series on hold. Okay, I was supposed to be giving you a video going through the rest of this book. We're doing a series right now, but this game was so incredibly instructive. I think you're going to learn more from seeing this game than from the chapter in that book, and I'm not exaggerating, okay? So this is an incredible position. It's hard to believe this came from an actual game. Let's go ahead and jump in. Principle number 1, the location of the king is of utmost importance. So I want to start by asking you a question. My opponent just played knight to here. Should I trade the knights, yes or no? Well, the answer is no, I should not. The best move was to keep the knights on the board, and it has to do with principle number 1, which is the location of the king is of utmost importance. What I did in the game was play g5 and then trade the knights. The problem is black's king is so much better than my king. Black's king is smacked up in the center of the board. It can literally go to anywhere on the board in just a couple of moves, okay? That's the first thing. My king is far from these pawns, which is probably where I want to go, right? So all of a sudden, you could just see black has an advantage just because of the location of the king. This is really, really important when you're trying to think about the endgame. Make sure you pay attention. Who's got the better king? And that needs to influence your decisions, okay? That's principle number 1. Let's keep going. I played king to d3. My opponent now played the move king to f4. This brings us to principle number 2. Prevent passed pawns whenever possible. Okay, a passed pawn in chess is a pawn that can go all the way to the back rank and become a queen, and no other pawns can stop it. So right now in this position, there are no passed pawns, okay? Because any pawn that tries to move is going to get either captured or it's going to be blockaded. This one's going to get captured or it's blockaded. There are no passed pawns, on the board. However, if my opponent just kind of casually is like, oh, white's coming over here, I see that, I'm going to go block the king out, right? He's allowing me the opportunity to start creating these passed pawns. And if he continues to make these random moves, guess what? I'm going to keep pushing. And if he takes, I'm going to now create a passed pawn. And this is going to be a problem for the black king. This brings us to principle number 3, which is look for tricks to get a queen. Okay, so let's back up a couple of moves here because I know I went kind of quickly. I'm trying to create a passed pawn. Black pushes. I go for h5. I'm trying to create the passed pawn. Black captures here. If I take, it gives black the opportunity to somehow try to defend. Maybe they start bringing their king over now to hunt down my pawns, and the game goes on, right? g6. I'm immediately going to go for the queen. Now, some of you might be thinking, but Nelson, he's just going to take, and when you take back, he's just going to go there and he's going to catch your pawn. What are you going to do, right? Principle number 3, look for tricks to get a queen. So when he captures here, what's the trick? h6. I push by, I don't recapture, and now the king is too far away. The king's not going to make it in time. And I get the queen, and I win the game. So there was kind of multiple tricks in this one. Number 1 was don't recapture here, start to create the threat. And the number 2 trick was sneak by and don't capture, okay? So look for tricks to get queens. Very, very, very important. All right, now let's go back because this was a hypothetical situation that did not happen in the game. And back to the game when we had this position, I played king to d3. My opponent went here because they were, going for principle number 2 of preventing passed pawns, right? They're not letting me do that because now if I push, I just lose the pawn. If I try to defend, he just sneaks over. He's hunting down my pawns. I can't do anything. He's just going to take everything, right? So he's prevented my passed pawns. Principle number 4 is think about pawn races. Okay, when I say a pawn race, a lot of times you end up in a situation where one player has a passed pawn on one side of the board, another player has a passed pawn on the other side of the board, and it's a question of who gets the queen first, right? If you get the queen like a couple of moves before your opponent does, you win. If you get the queens at the same time, it's usually a draw. That's what you need to understand. Okay, so pawn races. So I am envisioning in this position that, okay, my opponent's king is going to take these pawns. He's going to have this pawn coming down here to become a queen. I need to get the race going and get my own pawn over here to become a queen. Now, you might say, but how are you going to do that, right? There's pawn. Well, I have to figure out a way, and somehow I need to start that process. So I played the move c4. I'm trying to start pushing those pawns forward because I'm thinking about the pawn race that's most likely to happen very quickly. All right, this brings us to principle number 5, which is that every pawn move in a king and pawn ending, especially, is an opportunity or a risk. Okay, it's an opportunity or it's a risk. Every pawn move is an opportunity or a risk. My opponent made a huge blunder here. They played the move A5. Look at the eval bar when he plays this move. You guys see that? It literally loses the game on the spot. Why? It's such a natural looking move. I want you to remember, it's an opportunity, but it's also a risk every time you move a pawn. What's the opportunity for my opponent here? Well, if this happens, he has a pass pawn. That's great news, right? What is the risk about playing this move? This is an advanced question. What is the risk about playing this move? Well, I'll answer that question as I tell you principle number 6. Principle number 6 is that pawn breakthroughs can win you the game. Pawn breakthroughs can win you the game. It's very similar to principle number 3, where you look for tricks to get queens, but pawn breakthroughs can win you the game. When I say a pawn breakthrough, let me give you an example. I'm going to switch to a different position here for a second. Oops, let me shrink this one as well. This position right here is a well-known endgame position where white's king is totally boxed out by black's king, and you've got the 3 pawns going forward, but if you just sit around and do nothing, black's king is eventually just going to sneak over and he keeps you boxed out, and then he comes up and takes all your pawns. Okay, he just gobbles them up. So what you have to do is figure out how to get past. If you would like to pause, go ahead. All right, if you had a chance to look through that, the move is b6. Okay, you push the center pawn forward, and when they capture, whichever way they capture, you look at the pawn that's almost able to sneak by. This one, right? Except you can't because the pawn captures you. So now you push c6, luring this guy away, and if they don't do anything about it, you simply take, right? So they're going to take you, but then you've cleared the path. Your pawn sneaks by, you get a queen, and you win. Black's pawns are too far. Okay, that's a good example. So pawn breakthroughs can win you the game. You say, Nelson, that example was 3 against 3, and your pawns were further advanced. What are you talking about? There is a pawn breakthrough in this position for white. This blew my mind. By the way, I missed it in the game because it was so mind-boggling, and yet it was right there under my nose. The move that I should have played. Pause if you want. Okay, you ready? Here we go. C5. Absolutely incredible move. And my threat is I'm just going to take you and go get a queen. Like if you try to take me, guess what? I'm going to win. My pawn's closer. You're just 3 away. So that's not going to cut it for black. If you try to push, same thing. I'm going to take it. I'm going to win. You say, okay, you got to take, right? Look at this. Pawn takes a5 and I sneak by. These guys can't go anywhere. My king is there. White wins the game. Absolutely incredible. You know what's amazing about this, guys? Is if you take this pawn off of the board, you just remove one of black's pawns, they would be in a better position. They would be in a better position because then they could simply just push by. And I would have no way. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's set up the position here. It's like this, right? If this pawn was gone, let's just say hypothetically, and I try to go for a pawn breakthrough, black says, nope, I don't think so. Pawns are stuck. But because this pawn is here, I can always take it and sneak by. Absolutely incredible. So c5 would have just won me the game. Pawn breakthroughs can win you the game. That's principle number 6. Okay, now, I didn't see that. So I missed it. Okay, I just missed it. And instead of playing c5, I captured the pawn. Black captured me. And now I want to tell you about principle number 8, which is just count. Just count. Okay, this is kind of goes along with the pawn races. So in this position, black could have I played king c3, and black basically has to make a decision on what to do here. So they capture my pawn. I go king b3, and now they have to decide, do I come back this way, or do I go for this and try to push my pawn? This is where principle 8 comes in, just count, okay? And what I mean by that is rather than trying to calculate, like, okay, what's going to happen if I go here, he goes here, and I go here, and he takes here, and maybe I'll take this, and he goes here. It can get complicated, and you can make mistakes. The easy thing that I like to do is just go like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You just count who gets the queen first. So that takes 9 moves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, the king move sometimes depends where you put your king. Like you might not want to put your king in line with the opponent's queening square. So 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe. That's a better one. But it's 9 to 9. And I can tell you right away, that's probably just going to be a draw if that happens. So let's see if I was correct with my counting. Here, this is not what happened in the game, but if this would have happened, takes, here, he moves, takes, he pushes, I go here, okay, and you see 9 and 9. Both players have a queen. This is a draw, okay? Nobody can win this unless you blunder your queen, right? So that's just an easy, trick when you're trying to decide, like, should I go for this or not? Just count. Okay, just count for you, count for them, compare the numbers. If one player wins, that they're going to get the queen first, that's usually going to be a win. If not, it's a draw. So in the game, my opponent decided to not go for that route and instead bring the king this way to try to hunt down my pawn and leave these 2 pawns over there. So this is an interesting situation. I played king to a4. He brought the king up. I captured the pawn, and this brings me to principle number 9, which is remember Zugzwang. Zugzwang is a concept in chess where you are in a position that's totally fine. But if you have to move, you're now in a bad position. If you could just pass, you would be fine, but you can't pass in chess. Remember Zugzwang. Why am I saying Zugzwang in this position? Because I realized something very, very interesting here. If my opponent plays king d4, which they did, to attack my pawn, and I defend, we now have, or at least I thought we had, Zugzwang. Here's why. They don't really want to move their king away, because then my king can jump in and grab the pawn and I'm going to probably win, right? They could push a pawn over here, but I always have the option to put the ball back in black's court. For example, if they play h5, I could play h4. This is what happened in the game, by the way. If they play h6, I could play h3. And then after h5, I could play h4. And again, it's back in black's court. And I like that because I want them to have to push the pawn forward. Here's why. Because I can create Zugzwang with king to b5. Zugzwang, it's a solid position for black, right? Everything's defended, no problems, but they have to make a move. If they have to move away, guess what? I'm going to grab their pawn. And you know what's amazing about this position? I think the term is mutual Zugzwang, where it's actually Zugzwang for both of us. Like if it was my turn and I had to move away, I would be the one giving up my pawn. But I don't have to. It's black's turn. And so let me actually show you what happened in the game. They played king d4. I played king b4. They tried to go h5 now to mix up the pawn moves here a little bit. I said, I don't think so. h4, it's your turn. You have to move. What are you going to do? You're going to move away and let me invade? They didn't want to do that. So they played c5. I played king b5, got the Zugzwang, the mutual Zugzwang, except I get it because I made the move. They have to move away, and I'm going to get the pawn and I'm going to win the game. And king e5, I captured, and my opponent actually, I think, resigned after this move. Now, let's go back because I have to tell you about principle number 10, which is, principle number 10, you probably missed an idea. In king and pawn endings, even if you think you've calculated it all, you probably missed an idea. And I'm saying that to myself, okay? I've already missed multiple ideas in this game already. Even as a 2300, I miss ideas, okay? You've probably missed one too. So you'll notice that the eval bar shows this position is a draw, but I just talked to you about like why black's in trouble. What is he missing? What is the idea that black is missing? Well, if you had a chance to think through that, the idea is simply move your king. Just move your king. Let me invade because it's not as bad as you think it is. Yes, you're going to lose your pawn, but guess what? If you stay behind, you just stay in touch with my pawn, you always get to trade and you don't actually lose the pawn. So simple. And yet both of us, I'm rated 2300, almost 2400 in this game. My opponent was 2200. He missed it. I missed it. And he ended up losing, resigning the game in a totally drawn position because he didn't see that. He thought incorrectly that he had to play c5, that allowing my king in was just automatically bad, and he didn't even think any further. You probably missed an idea. Now, this brings me to principle number 11. Let's just pretend for a second that my opponent would have noticed this and played this move. And I invade, and they go here, and we get this trade. This actually looks pretty scary for me, because if I go over, he goes over, I go over, he goes over, I go over, he goes over, I go over, he goes. Wait a second. I'm losing this position. My king is not going to be able to take his pawn. I'm losing my pawn. What do I do? What do I do? He wins the game. What happened? Principle number 11. Remember the basics. Remember the basics. Let's go back a few moves. Remember the basics. What do I mean when I say remember the basics? I think we talked about this in the last lesson. If not, it's coming. But I'm pretty sure we talked about it in the last lesson in the Endgame series. Flank pawns are notoriously drawish. Why is that? Because the side who has the extra pawn doesn't have a lot of room to operate. So what does that mean? It means don't keep doing this with your king. At some moment, you have to change your plan. You have to change your plan and go the other way. Sneak around and bam, you trap the king on the edge of the board. See, this idea wouldn't work if it wasn't a flank pawn. Let me go ahead and show you this. If we were talking with a situation like this, okay, and you're like, aha, I trap your king. No, you don't. They just move up. They support the pawn. They're going to get a queen and they're going to win. But in this case, the king is stuck. There's no more board. So all you can do is this. You can never get away from this unless you push. But then I come here and you don't want to get trapped. So you try to come here, but then I sneak in front. And this is an easy draw. We've talked about it. The best case scenario would be something like this. Check. And this is a stalemate. That's it. So remember the basics, because it's so easy going back a few moves here in this position to get caught up in the fact that like, nope, I'm in trouble. I'm not going to get there. I'm not going to get there. I'm not going to get there. Oh, I'm going to lose, right? And you just miss the idea of like, no, all you have to do at any point, just go the other way. Just sneak around like this. That's it. Easy draw. Super easy draw. Remember the basics. Guys, those are 11 key principles for king and pawn endings. This is an incredible position. The ups and downs, the backs and forth, the wins that were missed so many different ways is incredible. And I hope you learned something. This was a lot of fun for me. We will pick back up with this book again next week. But this was just such a great opportunity to show you these principles. I had to do it. Let me know what you think. Did you learn anything? Did you get tricked at any moment? And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Stay sharp. Play smart and take care.